Today we're having a look at another GetRC Smart 35 airframe build, but this time we're using an all-in-one flight controller. We'll have a look at it here. So this is the board layup done, and you can see we're using the central mounting position on this airframe, and there's the all-in-one flight controller there. But we're sort of straddling some boards between the rear pillar of the central mounting position and the rear pillar of the rear mounting position. So it's a little bit of a different build. Okay, so let's get into it and have a look how it's done. And here we are back at the beginning. We've got the bolts in place, and I'll give you a look at those. So if we just have a look here, you can see that we're using the center stack and the two bolts from the rear stack. These bolts here in the center mounting position, these are 25mm bolts. And the ones at the back here are 22mm bolts. If we just turn over and have a look at the bottom here, you can see I'm actually using these blockhead bolts. So these are a little bit better than the cap head bolts. You've got a little bit more depth in those and a little bit more for the hex bit to grip into. On the bottom here I'm using these flanges. These are more just for decorative looks. They do protect the bolt heads a little bit, but these are just alloy, and they're just blue decorative ones just to match the other spaces I'm going to be using in the stack. So there we go. So now we'll take a look at how we layer up the components on the frame. Okay, so the next step after this is to actually mount the flight controller. Now with this flight controller, I've actually mounted it upside down. So I've turned it upside down so these components here can just take up a little bit of this gap that's between the frame and the board. And of course in beta flight we'll have to flip it over when we do our beta flight settings. But this just allows us to have plenty of room in the stack to fit not only the FedEx body absorber, but also the naked vista unit as well. Okay, let's move on to the next step. What we're doing here is just adding some spaces to bring this stack up to the height of the main board stack here. So we've got 2mm on here, a 1.5mm and a 3mm. And I'm just choosing different colors there just for color design. Next thing we do is we put the FedEx bike absorber, and this is mounted on a board. This is a 0.5mm thick board. And of course we've got 0.5mm spaces up the front here just to keep it all level across here. The next part is the naked vista unit. This is the base plate, the bottom board of the vista unit. On top of that, we're using 4mm spaces here on the vista unit and 5mm spaces back here. And next thing that goes on top is the board. This is the space board that the receiver is going to go on, and also some spaces here just to keep it all level. And of course we've got the top board of the naked vista unit and the receiver. In this case I'm just sticking on with a bit of blue tape, but of course that's going to be heat shrinked around here. Okay, on top of there we put a few 2mm spaces here just to add the gap so the nuts actually come flush with the top of the bolts when we put them on. And we'll also put some nuts on here at the back. So there we go, that's with the nuts already put on there. The total build done. And I'll just show you another component is the buzzer. And the buzzer actually goes between the two frame standoffs. So you can see them, there's the holes here. And then the camera in front of that. And just to show these components in a little bit more detail, what we've got here is the standoffs in place. So you can see the rear standoffs here. And the video transmitter cable actually comes down here, it comes underneath, you can see it there, it comes underneath this part here, up again, and connects to the Vista unit there. We've got two more standoffs, frame standoffs up the front here, and the two main ones at the front. Take the camera off for a bit. Okay, and here you can see the buzzer, and we've actually put a piece of heat shrink around these two standoffs, and that's what actually holds that buzzer in place. And I'll probably put a little bit of glue there as well. Okay, and then of course the camera goes in the front here. And a little bit of a look at the camera there. It's a very tight fit, a very neat fit, but the buzzer just fits in behind the camera. So that's how the components are laid up on the frame. We're now going to break it down again and rebuild it, doing the soldering, and I'll show you a couple of key stages through there and a couple of points with the soldering. Right, so the initial wiring of the flight controller is done. We're just going to have a look at that. Okay, so we can see here, what we're looking at here is actually the underneath of the flight controller board, that's going to be the top. This is the top of the flight controller here. Okay, so I'm actually going to be flipping the flight controller over and putting it this way. We're just utilizing some of the space for these connectors here. We're going to fill that void with those between the flight controller and the frame. So that's why I'm mounting it upside down. We need as much space as we can above for the Vista unit and the FedTech spike absorber. Okay, so I'll just talk you through what I've got here. We've got the XT30 connector already pre-soldered. The capacitor is soldered to the top of the board, which is going to be the underneath. Now, while we're on this side of the board, let's just have a look at this. We've got the 30 AWG silicon wires here. That's what we're using for the buzzer, which is coming out the front of the board. And these are going to just go straight through there and fill the void underneath the board there. And these wires you see here, once again, 30 AWG, this is for the receiver. And they're going to come back underneath the board here and up there. These two wires that you see here, soldered to the battery pad on top. Just turn it over and have a look. See on this side actually, okay, so these two wires here are actually for the FedTech spike absorber, and they're 28 AWG silicon wire. Okay, so that's the configuration. Okay, this board here, it's the Goku HD 745, it's the EVO 40 amp. And this one is quite a good board. It's got a 9-volt rail with a 1.5 amp BEC, so that's what we're using for the Vista unit here. And 1.5 amps, that's going to allow you to run up to, well, I like to run up to 1000 milliamp on the Vista unit, and it's quite okay with that. I'm normally running about 700 milliamps just for freestyle around the park. Okay, and the Vista unit is going to go around there, and this wiring harness is going to loop through here. And you might notice I'm actually running the wires through the center here. Okay, so this is where the ribbon cable goes here, and the wires actually go through the center of the Vista unit. I've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm having no problems with it at all. Okay, so that's the basic wiring harness done. Now we're just going to mount it. We're going to continue with the build, and then wire up the receiver and other parts as we go. Okay, so now with the flight controller board wiring done, let's take a look at it. There's just a couple of things to point out. So if we have a look at the side view here, you can see these are the receiver wires here, coming around here, looping up the back and into the receiver at the back there. You can see where the receiver is mounted up there. Also, just below that, at this angle, you can see the FedTech spike absorber down there, and the wires are also looping around the back here and up onto there. Okay, this one here, these wires here from the Calyx Vista unit. So these ones here, I've just secured them with this is a 1.6mm cable tie, and that's just going through the two holes there on the Calyx Vista, and that just secures those in place. Okay, so with that done, we're ready to wire up the motors and give it a test. Alright, we'll just have a look at the final build here. Then we've got plenty of room for the battery strap there, and that's thanks to using the combined stacks, the middle stack and the rear stack here. We'll just have a look a little bit around the airframe. And just a note on the motor wires. The motor wires, I've actually crossed them over. I'm using the back motor wires I'm connecting to the front of the SC and vice versa. And that's just to keep a bit of length on the motor wires in case I use these motors on a different build someday. Okay, but that's what the final build looks like. And just remember, if you'd like more information about this build, I've got a website with more images on the website and information about the build specifics. I'll put a link down the bottom in the video description for that. If you like this video and you think it's worth sharing, hit the like button below. And until next time, happy building.